Hi everyone, this is Miss Emily at Upstage Dance Center, and Emily is here today with me, and we are going to show you guys how to do the recreational makeup. So we are starting with her face. It's already been washed, she's nice and clean, she doesn't have any makeup on, she doesn't have anything on her skin. We did put some moisturizer on just to make sure that her skin was nice and fresh and moisturized. There's not going to be any dry skin or any places that are going to catch makeup really weird. So make sure when you're doing this that your child is wearing a button-up shirt. So we really want to make sure that whenever we put the makeup on and we do the hair that we're not then pulling a shirt off and smudging the makeup or messing up the hair. We just really want to make sure that we can just take that shirt off and we're good to go. So we're going to start with her. And because she is a little bit older, I am going to use a foundation on her, but if I had a younger child, I probably would skip the foundation. So if you have an older child and you're using foundation with them, you really want to make sure that you do their makeup first so that the makeup, when we blend it into her hairline, we don't want it to mess up anything. So if we did her hair first and it was nice and good to go, and then we tried to blend the foundation in around her hairline, it would probably get a little bit messy. So her hair would start to fall out and those types of things. We don't want that to happen. So I'm just gonna kind of push her hair back and I'm gonna dab this on her face, a few different places. And like I said, this is an optional step if you have a younger child. And I'm just using my fingers to blend it in. So you don't need anything super fancy right now. We're just making sure that we blend it in and we don't have any edges. If we look at her from the side, we shouldn't see a line across her jawline right there. So we're blending it down and making sure that that's nice and smooth. We're not going to see anything weird. Oh, right there. So blending it underneath the chin. And again, if you have a makeup sponge that you want to use to blend, you're more than welcome to use that. But I'm just using my fingers. As long as you're careful and you're making sure that you don't leave any harsh lines or any streaking when you're pulling on the foundation, should be fine. Okay, and coming over here, probably gonna need to apply just a little bit more when I go to do her chin and her nose and her forehead. But for right now, we're just blending it in, and around the nose is always a little bit tricky. So under her eyes, and then going back toward her hairline. And again, once we get back toward the hairline, we don't wanna just stop, we wanna blend it into the hairline. And if you're using a brush or a blending sponge, then you're gonna actually take that and push it into the hairline. And just blending, blending, blending. And you can kind of tell where I stopped on her chin. So we ran out of foundation there, so I'm just gonna use a little bit of extra right here. And I'm actually gonna switch hands. And blending that down her chin. Can you raise your chin up for me just a little bit? So making sure that it doesn't just stop there, but that we're getting it all the way down and we don't see that harsh line. Okay, and you can move back normal. Then I'm gonna do her nose. And again, with the nose, it's kind of tricky, but you wanna make sure that whenever you go to do around the nostrils, that you're not just kind of stopping and letting the foundation not get into the nose. I know that sounds a little weird, but we're not sticking our finger like in our nose or anything, but we're just making sure that we're covering the nostrils and around those, where the skin is changing. So she's good there. And we'll do her forehead. And so this is where I was talking about, we want to make sure that we don't have her hair done already, because if we did, when we go to blend the foundation in, we would start to kind of mess up these hairs up here, these baby hairs. So we're really pushing into that hair to make sure that there's not a line where we see the foundation stopping. And then same thing with the eyebrows and pushing it down into those hairs so that we're not just stopping. We don't want any lines. And I'm also going to put some on her eyelids. So most people's eyelids are a little veiny, a little translucent. So when we put that on there, it's going to kind of smooth everything out, but then it's also going to act like a primer, which means that the eyeshadow is just going to stay a little bit better. So I'm pushing it all the way down into her eyelid, all the way to the lash line, making sure that around the eye where the skin starts to be a little bit more tender, a little bit more wrinkly, I guess, that we're just kind of pushing it around so that it's not missing any spots. All right, and I'm using like a tapping motion instead of pulling on her eyes also, because we do want to be careful. I know that she's young, but we do want to be careful that we're not putting any weird strain on her skin, and she doesn't get wrinkles before she needs to. All right, so if you are skipping the foundation, then this is where you're gonna start. So we're just taking a little bit of powder, and this is just an e.l.f. pressed powder, and we're gonna use the applicator that it actually comes with. So again, with powder, we're going on top of the foundation. If you don't have the foundation, then you're not doing that. But if you do have the foundation, it's really important to make sure that you're placing the powder and not pulling. So I don't wanna push this down and then pull it across her face. I want to just kind of dab it on. Sorry, I surprised you. So I'm just dabbing it on and making sure that I'm covering everything. So this is going to give everything just a little bit more of a powdery finish. It's going to be a little bit smoother. And if I had just left the foundation without the powder, it would be a little bit more wet. So then when we go to put the blush and the foundation, or sorry, the blush and the eyeshadow on, it tends to get a little bit more clumpy and not as smooth. So the powder just kind of keeps that from happening. It lets everything be nice and blendable. I'm putting it all the way down onto her lip. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I've already done most of her forehead. And again, I'm pushing it up into her hairline, back onto her ear, and then just tapping it on everywhere else. Be careful, just be aware of where you're working on their face. So if you're working up by the eye or someplace that's sensitive, then you don't really want to be too harsh. You want to have kind of a lighter hand so that you're not poking them in the eye or anything like that. You wouldn't want to hurt anybody. All right, and she's good with the powder. And then again, we're using the list that you guys received. So this was emailed to you. It was also handed out at Parents Week. And then there are also extra copies out in the front. They are underneath the TV in the lobby. So if you need an extra copy, you can always go grab one. So we are about right here right now. So we've already done face wash, moisturizer, powder, and then we're gonna move on to the eyeshadow next. So we are using the CoverGirl Quad, and this is the one in Blooming Blushes. And so we are going to just open this up, and we're actually going to use the sponge tip applicator that comes with this. So the sponge tip applicator has two sides. There's a wider side, and then there's a little bit more narrow side. We're going to use those for different colors. So this has been used previously, so I just really want to pay attention to which side is used for which color, and you should be able to pay attention to the actual color that's on the applicator and be able to say, okay, this is the lighter one, this is the darker one. So if you start to use the same colors on both sides, then it's going to start to get blended together, and they're all going to kind of mesh together and kind of become one color instead of staying nice and separated. So we're going to use the lighter side for the lightest color, and I'm using this one on the very end, so it's on the very far left of the palette, and I'm just dipping my applicator in that, and then she's going to close her eyes for me, and I'm just going to press this on. So this is going to give us a nice even color across her entire eyelid. And with this, you don't really want to, it's the same thing with the powder, you don't want to put your color on and just pull it across the face, because if we do that, then it's going to start to get some fallout, the makeup's going to fall down, it could disrupt the other makeup that's underneath. So we really want to just make sure that we're pressing, we're putting the pigment where we want it to go, and then it's going to stay there. So again, I'm just going to fill in the entire eyelid. I'm going all the way up to her brow bone. And then I'm going to do one more time. All right, and done, we're gonna move on to the next color. So in the palette, there are the 4 colors, and we've already used this one. We're gonna move on to the 3rd one in the palette. So it's the slightly more glittery one, and I'm gonna use the other side of that bigger end of the applicator. So I'm just gonna get that on there, and then I'm putting this right in the middle of her eye and toward the inner corner. So get a little bit more. You should be able to tell when it's starting to run low on pigment, and you can just dip your applicator back into that color again to make sure that you're not just rubbing around an empty applicator. If you have problems getting the color to ever be noticeable enough, or if it's, you know, just kind of brushing away and it's not showing up enough, then you can use a setting spray and dampen your brush or your applicator, and that's gonna make it just be a little bit more intense in color. So that's always a good tip if you want something to just stand out a little bit more. I could just take a setting spray and spray it onto that end of that, and then just dip that back into the color again, and that would help it stand out. So I'm putting this really in the inner kind of half of her eye. So starting in the inner corner and then pulling it out, and then I'm kind of going over, it's about the 2/3 of her eye. So I'm not putting it on the very, very outer corner because we're gonna save that for the darker color. And that's gonna be next. And then anything that falls out underneath her eye, I'm just gonna leave there. So right now, as I was using that technically the second color in the order, but it's the 3rd color in the palette. As I'm using that, there are a little bit of kind of makeup flecks that are coming down, we call that fallout, and that's okay. So if that happens, you just wanna leave it there and let it sit on the skin. Don't try to brush it away with your fingers. Just leave it until you're completely done, and then you can actually wipe that away with a powder brush, and it's not gonna leave any residue on the skin. It's not gonna leave any color on the skin where you don't want it to be. And you don't have to worry about cleaning anything up. So again, I'm in that 3rd color. So the last color is the 4th color in the palette. It's this last kind of brownish color, and we are using the skinnier end of the applicator for this. So this is gonna kind of double as a crease color and as an eyeliner. And most kids don't really want something very, very close to their eye, so it's hard for parents to sometimes put an eyeliner or a mascara on. So this is just kind of a nice way to still get a little bit of definition around the lashes without having to worry about making a mess. So if you have an older child, and I am gonna actually show you how to do the eyeliner here in a second, but if you have an older child, eyeliner is a little bit easier. If you have a younger child, you're just gonna do this step and then the mascara later on. So I'm just putting this crease color, I'm kind of pulling it through, and I am pulling on this one a little bit more than the dab. So, doing both. And if it looks a little harsh, like the line right now, I don't know if you can see, but the line right here from the lighter color to the darker color, it's very distinct, you can see it. We're gonna use a brush here in a minute just to blend that out and to make sure that we don't actually see that. So it shouldn't look like a painting or a coloring page where we just have lines and that's where the makeup stops. So we're gonna actually blend that together so that we can see. So now we've got her eyeshadow on, and I'm gonna go in with 2 brushes. So this is a eyeshadow brush, and it's just fluffy, it's clean, there's no makeup on it. I'm not putting anything on with this. I'm just gonna kind of wipe the edges so that it all blends together and it isn't the harsh line between light and dark. So I'm doing this right along the top, and I don't know if you can tell that that line is just softening up. So now we have a smoother transition from the light shadow to the darker shadow. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing with my brush. I'm gonna do it on the same side. This is just a fluffy powder brush, and this is actually the same brush that we put powder on with. If you wanted to put a powder on instead of using the little compact puff that it comes with. So this, I'm just gonna lightly brush under her eye right here where all of that shadow is just kind of sitting on her cheek. I'm just gonna brush this and that's gonna brush that shadow away. So you can tell that it's not pushing anything into her skin. It's not applying like an eyeshadow would. So that's just getting rid of that extra color, and then she has a nice soft eye, okay? And the whole purpose of us putting makeup on isn't so that we can just make your child feel older or anything like that. We're not trying to make them grow up too fast, but we do want their features to stand out on stage. So the whole purpose of wearing makeup on stage is so that we can see their features. So think about in an up close setting, like you would be able to tell exactly where her nose is and the contours of her face. That's what helps our features stand out. But on stage, when you have those lights on you, it's a lot brighter and it makes your face look all one color. So when we've got kind of all one color, we can't see those contours and we can't tell that their eyes are as distinct as they are, or that they've got eyebrows. So makeup just helps us define those facial features so that we can really see them on stage a little bit better. So we're using this blush, but we're not gonna use the little applicator that comes with it. So there's a little applicator that goes in right here, but this isn't the shape of your cheek. So if we use this, it would basically make a rectangle shape on her cheek, and that's not what we want. So we wanna use a little bit fluffier brush, and this is a little bit more rounded, it's a little bit bigger, so that it's actually the shape of what her cheek looks like. So when we dip this in, you'll be able to tell we're just brushing this on her cheek, and I'm not just kind of focusing it in one spot. I'm kind of moving my brush around and putting it in different places. Again, I don't want just a clear outline of, hey, there's blush here, okay? So we wanna make sure that that blends in with the rest of her face. And if you have your child smile like this, it's actually easier to see the apples of their cheeks, which is where the blush should go. So I'm gonna put just a little bit more on. And when we put this on, we don't want it to stop too soon. So down here on the edges, it's looking a little bit too harsh. So I'm just kind of pulling it down just a tiny bit so that it's a little bit more blended. So I'm not putting blush down here. I'm just pulling out on those edges so that it's not a sharp line. And then same thing I'm doing up here. I'm pulling it up toward her temple, but I'm not making it a clear stripe of blush. So we shouldn't just look at her and see, oh, hey, she's got a painted on stripe of blush. So it's going up toward her ear, and then I'm just blending out the edges. And if you want to add just a tiny bit more on the apple to make it really stand out, you can. Blush done. We are moving on to mascara. Now, normally, like I said before, using foundation and mascara on your child, or sorry, foundation and eyeliner on your child are optional. So if you have a child who is younger, who is not able to sit still and is not able to let you get close to their eye, you're not gonna do eyeliner. If you have a child who's not gonna sit still for foundation, you're not gonna do foundation, you're just gonna do the powder, you're gonna do the eyeshadow. But if you have an older child like this, who is capable of sitting still and not fidgeting and not making weird faces, then you can do the foundation. And I'm actually gonna do an eyeliner with her as well. So the eyeliner that I'm using, and this was not on your all's list, so you did not have to buy it, but the eyeliner that I'm using is a gel eyeliner. It comes in a little pot like this, and you just unscrew the top, and it looks like a little paint pot almost. So I'm taking my brush, and I'm just dipping it down in there, and then I'm gonna put that right up next to her eyelashes. So eyeliner needs to go as close to the eyelashes as you can possibly get it, because the purpose is to make the eyelashes look thicker. So if we're putting it out on the eyelid, it's not gonna do its job. All right, so close your eyes for me. And then I'm just pushing it straight into her eyelashes. I'm trying to make sure that that line that I'm creating is not gonna be too wiggly or too far away from her eyelashes. And again, if you have a child who wobbles a lot, or who's wiggly, this is not gonna be a good thing. So you should be able to tell as I'm doing this that them moving would be a problem. So as she's sitting here, and if you wanna hold their head still a little bit, I'm just gonna kind of hold her jawbone so that I have a little bit more control of if she's moving or not. I'm just trying to make this as straight as possible. I'm just filling in. And open your mouth for me. Okay, so we can see that that's just a little bit thicker. Her eyelashes look a little bit more full. And I'm actually going to fill in over here with her eye open. So can you look up for me? So I'm gonna fill in, actually look over here to the side and look down just a tiny bit. Yes. So I'm gonna fill this in just a little bit more. Trying to make sure that that line is just going all the way to her tear duct. Okay. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you do make a mistake, so it is possible to either get a little bit too much product on your brush, or if you're doing mascara, it's possible for that wand to hit the eyelid as you're doing it, especially if your child has what we call hooded eyes, which means they don't have a nice crease in their eye. But if that happens, it's always a good idea to keep an eye makeup remover on hand, and this is just one that I use personally, but you can take a Q-tip and just put a little bit of that eye makeup remover on and then go in and clean up whatever mistakes you made, and you don't have to worry about messing anything else up. So I am gonna use this a little bit on her eye really quickly, just to make sure that everything looks as good as it possibly can. So I think we're gonna do just a little bit right here. And this is just gonna kind of soften up. It was a little thick there on the inner corner, so that kind of softens it up just a tiny bit. So we're good now. And almost done, we're getting there. We're gonna do the mascara on her next. So again, if you have a younger child, mascara is gonna be a little bit more difficult. You're gonna need to use your judgment for if your child is able to handle this. And again, the practice is great for your kids too, so that they can sit and really get used to you doing makeup on them. They can get used to what it feels like to have to sit still and to be patient. If you have a child who is wiggly and no matter what you try, it's not gonna happen, then you can skip the mascara too. What I always suggest for younger kids is to stand behind them. And I would do that with Emily too, but she's sitting up a little bit, so I'm not gonna be able to get behind her like I would normally want to. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take my mascara and I am going to ask her to look down. So she's still keeping her eyes open, but she's not closing them. Okay, she's looking down for me so that I can make sure I'm not gonna get the mascara up on her eyelid. So those eyelids that we already put the eyeshadow on, we don't want those to get messed up. And then just make sure that you're staying looking down. And I'm just wiggling this in. And I don't have to worry about getting close to the roots. So for this, we're just gonna kind of make sure that the mascara is on the ends of the eyelashes. And I'm not gonna worry about doing the lower lashes either, just because that's something that you can do when your child gets a little bit older. Okay, and then if they have long eyelashes, like Emily has really long eyelashes, so if she opened her eye all the way up, that would get on, don't do that, it would get on her upper eyelid. So we don't want her to look up or anything like that until the mascara is really nice and dry. Okay. All right, so we can see that her eyelashes just look a lot darker now. They're gonna stand out on stage, whereas before they would have just kind of blended in. We wouldn't have been able to tell that she even really had eyelashes. So now we can see them a little bit better. If I wanted to do the lower lashes, I would have her look up. So tilt your head just a tiny bit and look up. So I would take the mascara, and I'll show you guys. But again, I wouldn't do this on a younger child. I would take the mascara, and as she's looking up, trying to keep her eyes open, trying not to let them blink too often, but blinking is okay. So it's not gonna mess anything up, but we just don't want her to twitch or to squeeze her eyes. So if she squeezes her eyes shut, then the mascara is gonna start to get all over. So you can tell it does just add a tiny bit more definition to the bottom half of her eye. All right, and look up for me again. So again, I'm just trying to wiggle that in. I'm kind of using like a seesaw motion. Okay, down. Okay. So The reason that we picked this is because a liquid lipstick dries down to a matte finish and it's not as creamy, so it's not gonna rub off if your child, you know, is playing with their lips or is biting their lips or anything like that. So this is a really good product so your child isn't able to kind of mess up what you've spent your time doing. So I'm gonna start with her just kind of making like a normal kind of kiss face, but I'm not gonna worry about doing the outside edges right now, so I'm just kind of filling in the middle part, and we'll do the edges in just a second. So I'm filling in all of that middle stuff, and then doing the top. Get a little bit more color on as you go. And then as we get done with this inside part, I'm gonna have her stretch her lips out a little bit more, and that's when we'll do the edges. Okay, all right, and I'm gonna switch sides. And now I'm gonna have her make a little bit more, so like this. So she's spreading her lip across her teeth. So she's going like this. So it's like how little kids mess around and make fun of old people sometimes. So as she does that, it's just making her lips a lot tighter. So I can go in and get a nice clean line with the lipstick. Okay, so I'm just kind of doing the edges right now. And I don't need to use a lip liner with this. Unless you just really wanted to, a lip liner with this lipstick is not necessary. And again, if she needs to sneeze or do anything like that, she just needs to tell you so that you're not, you know, in the middle of doing lipstick and then all of a sudden they have a nice red streak across their face. And as you're doing this, you also really want to make sure that they're not piercing their lips together or kind of mashing them. So when we do that with a chapstick or something, I know it feels great, but with this, we want to let it just sit and dry first. And then once it's dry, they can really, you know, do whatever. So I'm just making sure that that edge is nice and crisp. And then going back in with a little bit more, I'm gonna do the top. And with an older child like this, it's a little bit easier to do the lips, but if you have a child who's twitchy, or if you have, again, a younger child, it's a good idea to pull that lipstick in toward their mouth so that if they do twitch, it's not gonna make a streak across their face. It's gonna go into their mouth and it's not gonna mess up all of the stuff that you just spent your time working on. So, right. That looks funny. Okay, so now I'm gonna fill in the edges where her two upper lip and bottom lip come together. So I'm just gonna really make sure that it doesn't look like she has two separate lips. I'm gonna connect them right there, and then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. All right, and then once you get done with their lips, again, you wanna just emphasize the fact that they shouldn't be mashing their lips together, just because we wanna let that lipstick have a chance to dry down and get fully matte so that it's gonna last a really long time. All right, after you are done, always kind of check the work that you've done and make sure that there's nothing else that needs to be adjusted. So as I'm looking at her, I don't see any more makeup underneath her eyes. I don't see any mascara that got on her eye when we were doing the mascara, or eyeliner, anything like that. If you do have a child who has eyebrows that are a little bit thinner, so Emily has nice thick eyebrows and they're very pigmented so we can actually see them, but if you have a child who has thinner brows or they're very light, you have a fair-headed child, then you can just fill them in lightly to make sure that you can still see their brows from a distance. So I'm just filling it in just a tiny, tiny bit on the end. And she doesn't need her eyebrows filled in all the way across because the inner parts of her brows are nice and thick. So I'm just kind of putting a little bit of product on the ends to make them stand out. But again, this is completely optional. It's not necessary. It's not even something that I think we included on the list. So it is just up to you if you want to do that. So I'm just gonna spray this on her face, and I'm gonna have her close her eyes for me, and then I'm gonna spray it in an X first. So I'm spraying it from top down to bottom, and then I'm gonna go the other way. And then I'm gonna go in a T shape. So I'm gonna go from left to right and right to left, and then I'm gonna go from bottom to top and top to bottom. Try not to squish your face up too much. All right, once it's done, it is gonna be a little bit wet, so you do want to make sure that they're still not touching anything, and that we can just kind of fan it and dry it out, and that way once it's dry, it's good to go. All right, so that is it for our makeup tutorial. Hope this helps you guys, and if you have any questions, comments, if you need help with anything, just let us know down in the comments, and we will do our best to reply back and make your life easier. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.